The main question is this available to us, the recording? And the answer is yes. Go to leanleadership.guru. There's a blue button there, and it says join our online office. You can get a 7-day trial free, so just apply for it. You'll get an email back telling you how to join. Now, when you go in, along the top, there is a documents icon. You'll find the documents icon. Click on that. Then you'll find webinars. Then you'll find Jeff Liker webinars, and it's in there. Jeff, thank you very much for doing this again each month. You're so consistent. Thank you. Go ahead.
Sure.
So what this ends up looking like in this model line, again, we're trying to go deep, and we're trying to develop coaches, and we're also trying to transform the process so people could see what the future state looks like and how much better it is, and that this lean stuff actually makes sense and works. And so we can educate management, we can educate engineers, we can educate the people working in that area. And the way we're going to do that is to teach everybody both the improvement methods, in Mike Rother's term, the improvement kata, which is the routine for how you go about improving, starting with understanding the direction, then the current state, setting target conditions, and then through PDCA experimenting until you achieve the target condition, then developing your next target condition. So we're teaching that methodology through practice routines. You're doing it every day for a short time, and it's becoming a habit. And you want that habit in the mind of the vice president, who is overseeing all of operations. And that person is then learning, and at the same time learning to be a coach to the value stream manager who owns that whole future state vision. And that person is learning and being a coach to each of the value stream loop managers, so the assembly manager and the stamping manager and the welding manager and the purchasing manager. And then within each of those loops there are a set of processes. There's several welders, there's several people who run stamping presses, and they're going to be learners coached by the head of that department, by their supervisor. So we have a chain of learners and coaches who are developing the deep expertise by doing in this model line area. Again, that's the picture that we're aiming for. And that's, again, using what we know about how people learn. You need to have an opportunity for people to learn in a structured environment using structured methods with practice routines where they do something every day. And you need to have the coaching capacity to give them the corrective feedback they need because they can't see for themselves how they're doing. Therefore, you're limited in how much you can take on by your coaching capacity. If you had 100 crackerjack coaches who thoroughly understood lean and teaching and coaching and how to create structured routines and teach the structured routines like the kata, if you had 100 of those people, you could deploy them in 100 different places and have 100 projects going on at once. If you have 2 or 3, you could do this in 2 or 3 places. Okay, so the strengths and traps, obviously this is what I'm promoting because I believe that at some point, if you're serious about continuous improvement, you need the deep knowledge. You need skilled practitioners of this craft that we call continuous improvement. It is following the Learning to See method. If you read the book Learning to See that Mike Rother and John Shook wrote, they're describing this model line approach, which they learned from Toyota when Toyota worked with outside companies. And it's current state, understand where we are, have a direction, a vision, what problems are we trying to solve, develop a future state vision, break the future state vision down into pieces, assign those pieces to people, and then through PDCA improve and learn your way to the future state. You do it within typically one product family, one value stream, and you're going to do one value stream at a time unless you have a lot of resources. It's going to involve a cross-functional team, and the cross-functional team has all the needed subject matter experts. In addition, all of these team members are learners, they're students. So the purpose of this exercise is to teach. It's the first one, or for one of the first ones. It's to teach more than to get results, although you want to get results too, to provide reinforcement, to be credible, and to get management on board. And then the Trachilis approach is one method for having structured practice routines to develop in people the ability to improve, use the right tools in the right situation. It's something that is well integrated with a bigger picture view of what you're trying to accomplish. If you want a culture of continuous improvement, it provides many benefits. Typically, you'll find the value stream that you work on will improve in almost every respect. You'll get better quality, lower cost, more productivity, safety will be better, morale will be better, and the results usually can be well quantified, even though there's also some intangible benefits where, for example, the work is orderly, organized, it makes sense to people, and they're not constantly in a crisis mode, so there's less stress. And we're developing experience with Lean as a system, not as isolated individual tools. The traps are that it takes time and people try to short-circuit it. Can we make the 6-month model line into a 4-week model line? Can we do it in 3 kaizen events? And the answer is no, not well. It requires a lot of management commitment, a long-term view, and what we see is that there's a lot of variability in the execution. And I was part of a major multinational company that bought into the idea of value stream transformation, and they assigned black belts who were formerly Six Sigma black belts and got a minimal amount of Lean training to do projects all over the world in over 90 plants. And the variation in the quality was incredible, from terrible to mediocre to very, very few instances where it was done well. So it requires a high level of skill, and that's why you set the bar high and you end up with very few qualified coaches to begin with, and therefore very few areas that you can focus on. And that requires then patience by senior management, that we're making an investment, we're seeing results in a small area, we'll eventually multiply those results and there'll be big bottom line results, but it may take a few years. So if we go narrow and deep, what will happen over time is that we're picking one slice, one value stream, then we're spreading out to another value stream, then we're spreading out maybe to 2 more value streams, then 4 more value streams, and it will tend to then multiply exponentially over time, but that time is years. When we go broad and shallow, we're going to do a layer of 5S, then a layer of pull systems, or we might do kaizen events in many different places and blitz all those areas. And typically, as I said, the results will not be sustainable and we won't see Lean as a system. So the question is, do you have the patience to go narrow and deep and multiply? Or if you're in a big rush and you're under tremendous pressure to get quick results, you may have to go shallow and not so deep and rely more on experts, at least in the beginning. Now, in the book that George and I worked on, the book about developing lean leaders that's just about to come out, we talk about the Dana story. And in Dana, they were in a crisis. They did not have the luxury of narrow and deep, but they had some very, very skilled people who used to work for Toyota, led by Gary Convis, who was the managing officer in Toyota. So they managed to find a pretty good balance. In the first year, the plant managers were the point people. They had they were getting weekly coaching, and they were doing model line projects, and at the same time, they were also using the hot jobs approach and going from area to area, cutting costs, because cost reduction was the name of the game, to survive. That company was in a crisis coming out of bankruptcy and trying to stay out of bankruptcy. So in that case, they did a very quick, intensive job of going broad, but with very clear focus on cost reduction, and they were developing the managers very intensely. And the managers either got developed or they ended up no longer working with the company. So it was really sink or swim. So that was an exception where I think they balanced the two fairly well. After they got through the crisis, then they had the luxury of starting to go more deep. And they went back and started to do that. This is a diagram from Mike Rother's Improvement Kata Handbook, which is free online on his website, and it will be for sale when he finishes and publishes it in the fall. And they talk about phases. What they found works with deploying the improvement kata first. That is, you learn how to improve, then you learn how to coach somebody so they improve. And there's structured routines for improvement, structured routines for coaching. In phase one, the outside experts scope out the place to call that grasp the situation. In phase two, there's an advanced group that's trained. The advanced group is the first group and should include at least the senior person responsible for a major operation, like the chief operating officer or a plant manager, and also include some of the people you're training as staff specialists to become coaches, and also include people in the areas where you're focusing on, like the supervisor and the manager. And at the senior level, there's a team that's learning by doing. They're actually doing the improvement kata, and they're going to become like the steering committee, the executive steering committee, and for the whole deployment over time. They even have standards, like that advanced team of steering executives should personally be learners and achieve 3 target conditions through PDCA and go through at least 25 cycles of PDCA on real processes. So they have enough level of understanding so that they can make decisions about deployment. And then you're picking slices of the organization to train deeply, and the speed of that is just determined by the advanced group that's meeting every other week. And they're asking in those meetings, what's happening in the floor? Let's go to the floor and see. Maybe we'll do some coaching cycles. Where are we? What's our direction? What's a good next step? So they're following the improvement process, the improvement kata, to make decisions about how to deploy the deep learning itself. They're deploying the learning process, not deploying the tools. And they're deciding it's time to pick another department. These managers are the ones who should be the next learners. We can now do 3 departments. We've started 1 department. Those are all decisions that are made not in advance with a roadmap, but dynamically as you deploy lean, as you see what's happening. So it's constant PDCA of the deployment process. If you have a good advanced group, then they'll make good decisions. And if they make bad decisions, they'll find out pretty quickly because they're paying attention to the process, and they have a process that they can check. And they know what the standard is. They know if they're meeting the standard or not. The 3-phase deployment approach, therefore, starts with scouts who study the subject. They form an advanced group. The advanced group meets. They develop the initial plan for how they're going to get trained. The advanced group practices the improvement kata with an external coach there. So that requires senior level people who go back to school, and they're in the process on the floor with the workers, and they may have stopwatches, and they're making graphs and charts, and they're coming up with ideas, and they're deploying the ideas, and they're doing what, say, a black belt in training would do. And then at some point, the advanced group has enough understanding that they can now look ahead and develop a 6 to 12 month skill development target condition. What do we want to look like in 6 to 12 months? How many people should be trained? At what level? How many areas should be worked on? How many challenges can we meet? And then in phase 3, they will expand into normal business processes, slice by slice, deciding as a team, based on all the knowledge they've gained in the year, what is a slice? How big is it? How much capability do we have? And the important thing is you don't want to go faster and outpace your capability to coach. So what is best? What works best, whether you're using the improvement kata and the coaching kata, whether you're using Toyota business practices, their problem-solving method, and on-the-job development, their method for developing coaches, whether you're using some other problem-solving process and coaching method, what works best is we start with developing leaders to be coaches, first to learn how to improve, then to teach people to improve through value stream improvements. We actually have the change agents resident in each work site, but we're doing it step by step and spreading it organically through thoughtful plan, do, check, act. Where do we start? What are our biggest challenges? How fast can we go? What's our capacity? And where are we going to go next? So this is the process, the way Mike laid it out with the advanced group, and going slice by slice and developing individual coaches and seeing what happens. You know, actually experiencing developing the coaches, experiencing how long it takes, seeing their strengths and weaknesses. So being at the Gemba, learning, then allows you to decide what to do next. This is a challenge because it's contrary to the way we're taught to manage. It's contrary to the way we've experienced management. You have less control. You don't have your implementation plan for the next 2 years. You don't know precisely what benefits you'll get at the end of 2 years, so it's hard to do the cost-benefit analysis. It requires stepping into an area of uncertainty and learning as you go, instead of walking in with superficial certainty that I know what's going to happen. And it also requires experienced people admitting that they can learn something new and taking the time to learn new skills that may be ego challenging because they're supposed to be the experts already. But it works. And when you see it work, it's amazing. And it's a slow process. It starts to develop momentum, and then it starts to move very, very quickly. But you have to have that patience up front to go deep. Now, having said that, if you've gone broad and you have a lot of people who understand the basic tools and the vocabulary, and you've gotten some good results, and you've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years, you can still, like I've been playing golf for 15 years, I still took a lesson and I'm going back to my swing, you could still go back to the swing. You could still go back to the basics. And Toyota is always doing that. Repeatedly after the recall crisis, what you heard from Akio Toyoda is we're going back to the basics. And there was a lot of basic training taking place all over Toyota globally. So you can always go back and restart and start to learn the right way and build on the knowledge that you've gained using these other approaches. With that, I can take a few questions. Because the question is, how do you get these leaders who've been successful doing whatever they've been doing and risen to a high level to be willing to collaborate, to participate, and to learn new skills, to play the game. And my experience is once they start playing the game, they like it, they're engaged, they can see the benefit. Really the issue is there's the expression, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't get him to drink. So the challenge is getting them to drink for the first time under the assumption that it's good water, that they're going to like it when they try it. And that means two things. One is you have to somehow get them to try it. Number two, when they do try it, it has to be sufficiently developed and prepared so that they have a good experience, they like it. Now the improvement kata is one very well thought out methodology, and it gives you a step-by-step process, and with a good coach, people almost always have a good experience. If we put people in a kaizen event, which many organizations do who use kaizen events, use the hot jobs approach and the kaizen event approach as their main tool, you can almost always get leaders to enjoy the kaizen events. They'll talk about it for years. They love it. But you've got to get them to carve out the time, and maybe they've canceled 4 or 5 times before finally you can get them trapped for the first day, and you hope by lunch they don't leave. So you need to somehow get them to come. It does help if you can't get the most senior leaders. Let's say you can't get the chief financial officer engaged, but you can get the CEO engaged. Then the CEO, then I would spend time with the CEO, getting them involved and engaged in an improvement effort and taking a leadership role. And then I would suggest that they pull in the chief financial officer. Most often, these programs are focused on operations, so you can often get the chief operating officer involved. And that person usually meets daily or almost daily with the CEO and CFO, so they are in the in-group, in the C-suite. So if you can get somebody in the C-suite to be the first, then you can ask them to help you to get somebody else involved. In other words, they become somebody like a salesperson for you. And they'll say, hey, you got to try this. It's really good. Here's what I did. In fact, can I show you what I did? And they bring them down to the operation, and they show them. One thing I like about the improvement kata as opposed to a kaizen event, and it depends on who runs the kaizen event, but in the kaizen event, usually you're doing a lot of things very quickly, and none of them are being done in a very highly disciplined way. So these smart leaders can come in and shine, and they often do. They're the fastest at filling out the forms, and they have no problems timing. What I found with the improvement kata, since it is very structured and systematic, is that almost always, whoever it is, whatever their position, they're going to get some critical feedback from the coach, and like I got from my golf instructor, and they will struggle a little bit, and they'll think they're doing great, but they'll find out they're not doing so great. So at each step of the way, they'll realize there's something here to learn. And the gap between, I think I'm doing it, the coach says I'm not doing it well, I adjust based on what the coach says, and then it's going better, that's where the learning takes place. Otherwise, there's a risk if there isn't a structure for practice routines, there's a risk that I think I'm doing it, I leave that 1 week Kaizen event high as a kite, and I believe I'm an expert when I really am not. Anyway, you need to get them to start to try something, and when they try it, they'll usually like it if it's well organized, well orchestrated, well led.
Great insight. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Hypnotizing. Something in the air.